It seemed like any other antique wedding portrait. That is, until you focused on the bride's intertwined hand, and the darkness it concealed became chillingly apparent. Sunlight streamed through the grand windows of the Atlanta Historical Archive, illuminating Dr. Rebecca Morrison as she meticulously catalogued a recent donation, a collection of early 20th century photographs from an anonymous estate. Amidst the sepia-toned portraits and stilted formal gatherings, one image snagged her attention, halting her breath. A wedding photograph, dated 1903, a stern-faced white man, dressed in a dark, impeccably tailored three-piece suit, sat rigidly beside a young black woman, adorned in a pristine white wedding gown, its lace intricate and delicate. Their hands were clasped tightly between them, an act ostensibly meant to convey unity, a symbolic gesture of matrimonial accord. Rebecca's 15 years as a historical archivist had honed her eye for detail, and she knew immediately when something felt amiss. This photograph, in particular, screamed of some deep, unsettling wrongness that resonated beyond the surface. In 1903 Georgia, interracial marriage wasn't merely a social taboo. It was a flagrant violation of the law. The state's draconian anti-miscegenation laws, cemented in place since 1750 and further reinforced in the aftermath of the Civil War, classified such unions as criminal offenses, punishable by lengthy terms of imprisonment. And yet, here was a stark piece of photographic evidence that appeared to directly contradict that reality. She immediately flagged the photograph for a high-resolution digital scan, the unsettling feeling refusing to loosen its grip. 2 weeks later, hunched over her computer screen, Rebecca meticulously reviewed the digital files, systematically magnifying various details. The generic studio backdrop, the woman's glittering jewelry, the man's tight-lipped and unforgiving expression. Then her focus narrowed to their joined hands. As she increased the magnification, a wave of nausea washed over her, and her blood turned to ice. The bride's fingers weren't simply resting passively within his grasp. They were deliberately, almost desperately, positioned to transmit a distress signal, her thumb and index finger forming a subtle, but unmistakable plea for help, a silent cry for salvation. Rebecca's own hands trembled as she zoomed in further, the truth crystallizing with horrifying clarity. The woman's fingers were arranged with clear intention, cleverly concealed within what appeared to be a traditional matrimonial pose, but in reality, screaming for rescue, begging to be saved. This wasn't simply a portrait of an illegal marriage. It was irrefutable evidence of something far more sinister, more depraved. A silent scream, captured and frozen in time for 120 years, patiently waiting for someone, anyone, to finally see it, to understand its hidden meaning. Without a moment's hesitation, Rebecca contacted Dr. Marcus Williams, a renowned specialist in African American history and a leading authority on the Jim Crow era. When he arrived at her office that evening, she presented him with the photograph, offering no explanation, no context. Marcus studied it in silence, his expression slowly shifting from curiosity to deep concern, his brow furrowing with mounting unease. "This shouldn't exist," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. Georgia's anti-miscegenation laws in 1903 made this utterly impossible. Unless, Rebecca prompted, already dreading the answer, already suspecting the unspeakable truth. Marcus leaned back in his chair, his face grim. Unless this wasn't actually a legal marriage at all. Unless this photograph documents something else entirely, coercion, captivity, or worse. Look at her face, Rebecca. That's not a bride's expression. That's terror, barely contained. A mask of fear layered thinly over the abyss. They spent hours poring over every minute detail, the silence punctuated only by the soft hum of the computer and the rustling of archival papers. The studio stamp read, Morrison and Wright Portrait Studio, Atlanta, Georgia, August 1903. A faint, handwritten notation on the back of the photograph sent another shiver down Rebecca's spine. It read simply, Mr. Charles Whitfield and servant. Not wife, not bride, servant. The word hung in the air between them, heavy and suffocating, like a curse. He didn't even try to hide what she was to him, Marcus said quietly, his voice laced with anger. This photograph was never intended to document a marriage. It was intended to document ownership, pure and simple. Rebecca felt a wave of nausea rise in her throat. But why the wedding dress? Why stage it this way, creating such a grotesque charade? Marcus pulled up historical records on his laptop, his fingers flying across the keyboard. Control, humiliation, a display of power. Some white men during this period exercised their dominance over black women in unspeakable ways. They couldn't legally marry them, but they could still force them into situations that mimicked marriage, a grotesque parody that satisfied their twisted desires while meticulously maintaining their precious social standing. The woman had no rights, no protection, absolutely no way out. That night, sleep eluded Rebecca. She tossed and turned. The woman's face burned into her mind. Her carefully positioned fingers, the silent scream that had echoed across more than a century. Who was she? What unspeakable horrors had she endured? And most haunting of all, had anyone seen her signal at the time, or had it remained cruelly invisible until this moment, tragically too late to save her? The next morning, fueled by a burning sense of purpose, Rebecca and Marcus launched their investigation at the Georgia State Archives. Their immediate priority was to identify both individuals in the photograph. The name Charles Whitfield served as their starting point, their first thread to unravel this tangled web of history. The archivist, an elderly black woman named Mrs. Dorothy Hayes, who had dedicated 35 years of her life to preserving Georgia's history, visibly tensed when she heard the name. Charles Whitfield, she repeated slowly, her voice tinged with a mixture of sadness and anger. That's a name that still carries weight in certain circles, though not the kind anyone should be proud of. She disappeared into the labyrinthine records room and returned moments later, her arms laden with several overflowing boxes. The Whitfield family was prominent in Atlanta from the 1870s through the 1920s. They amassed their considerable fortune in cotton and textiles in the years following the war. Charles Whitfield inherited the family business in 1898. The 1900 census revealed Charles Whitfield, age 28, residing in a sprawling mansion on Peachtree Street, surrounded by immense wealth and an army of servants, each meticulously listed in his household. Rebecca's stomach tightened as she scanned the names. All black women and girls, their ages ranging from 14 to 30. One entry, in particular, snagged her attention, causing her heart to skip a beat. Louisa, age 16, domestic servant, literate. Marcus unearthed property records revealing that Whitfield owned numerous properties scattered throughout Atlanta, including a sprawling textile factory where he employed dozens of workers, the vast majority black women and children, toiling under brutal conditions for minimal wages, their lives a constant struggle for survival. Newspaper articles from the period lauded him as a progressive employer and a pillar of the community, his philanthropy celebrated throughout the city. The sickening disconnect between his carefully constructed public image and the dark reality they were uncovering was almost unbearable. Their search intensified, focusing on uncovering any information about the woman in the photograph, with her only identifying marker being the word servant on the photo notation. Finding her identity felt like searching for a needle in a vast, historical haystack. But Mrs. Hayes, drawing on her decades of experience, offered a crucial suggestion. If this photograph was taken in August 1903, check the city records for missing persons reports or any unusual incidents around that time. Sometimes families bravely attempted to report when their daughters disappeared, even though the police rarely, if ever, did anything about it. After 2 grueling days spent sifting through fragmentary and incomplete records, Marcus stumbled upon a police report from September 1903. It was brief and dismissive in its tone, but it provided the first genuine clue, a flicker of hope in the oppressive darkness. Report filed by Henry and Martha Johnson regarding their daughter, Louisa Johnson, age 19, employed in the household of Charles Whitfield. Family claims she's not been seen in over a month, despite living just 2 miles away. Mr. Whitfield states Miss Johnson is fulfilling her contracted duties and is in good health. No evidence of wrongdoing. Case closed. Rebecca cross-referenced the name with the 1900 census, her heart pounding with anticipation. There she was, Louisa Johnson, age 16 in 1900, living with her parents and 3 younger siblings in a modest home near Auburn Avenue. Her father, Henry, worked as a carpenter, his hands calloused and strong. Her mother, Martha, worked as a laundress, her days filled with endless toil. The family was literate and proudly owned their small home, symbols of their striving for a better life. They were part of Atlanta's burgeoning black middle class, relentlessly trying to build something lasting despite the crushing weight of Jim Crow segregation. Marcus unearthed more records, each one painting a clearer, more devastating picture. In 1902, Henry Johnson had been severely injured in an accident at a construction site, rendering him unable to work, his livelihood shattered. The family, already struggling, plunged into deep debt, their precarious financial situation spiraling out of control. A notation in a local church's charity records revealed that they had desperately appealed for help in early 1903, their hope dwindling with each passing day. "This is how it happened," Marcus said, his voice heavy with a potent mix of anger and sorrow. Whitfield saw an opportunity, a family in desperate circumstances, a vulnerable young woman with no viable options. He offered employment, likely promised good wages, a lifeline in their sea of despair. Then, Rebecca found a letter in the church records, a desperate plea written by Martha Johnson to the pastor in July 1903. "We have not seen our Louisa in 3 weeks. Mr. Whitfield says she's well and working hard, but he will not allow us to visit her. He says it would disrupt the household routine. Reverend, my heart tells me something is terribly wrong. My daughter writes to us every week without fail, but we have received no letters. When I went to his house, the servants wouldn't even look at me, their faces etched with fear. Please, can you help us?" The pastor's response, carefully noted in his journal, offered a chilling glimpse into the racial dynamics of the time. "Spoke with Mr. Whitfield regarding the Johnson girl. He assured me she is healthy and content, simply busy with her duties. He expressed annoyance at the family's concerns and suggested they are being ungrateful for his generosity in employing her. I'm inclined to believe him. The Johnsons must trust in God's providence and not cause trouble for a prominent gentleman who has shown them Christian charity." Rebecca tracked down the Morrison and Wright portrait studio records through the Georgia Historical Society. The studio had operated from 1895 to 1910, capturing the faces of Atlanta's elite, and remarkably, some of their materials had been preserved by the photographer's descendants. She contacted James Morrison, the great-grandson of William Morrison, the studio's founder, hoping he held the key to unlocking more of Louisa's story. James invited them to his home in Decatur, a charming suburb just outside Atlanta, where he maintained an extensive archive of his great-grandfather's work, a testament to his dedication to preserving his family's legacy. "William Morrison photographed Atlanta society for 15 years, James explained, leading them into his cluttered study. He kept detailed journals about his clients and his work. He was also, rather quietly, the son of an abolitionist, a fact that colored his perception and led to internal struggles with photographing the uglier aspects of Southern society. He carefully pulled out a worn leather journal from August 1903, its pages brittle with age. I've read through all of these journals countless times over the years. Some entries have stayed with me, haunting me. This one, in particular, is especially unsettling." He opened the journal to a page marked with a faded silk ribbon and began to read aloud. August 17, 1903. "Today I performed perhaps the most disturbing task of my entire career. Charles Whitfield commissioned a wedding portrait, but there was no wedding. The young Negro woman he brought to the studio was clearly not there of her own volition. She wore an expensive gown that didn't fit her properly, and her eyes held such profound fear that I nearly refused the commission outright." The entry continued, painting a vivid picture of that fateful day. Whitfield insisted on posing them as a married couple, forcing their hands together in a gesture of false intimacy. The woman, he never used her name, only ever referred to her as girl, began to tremble uncontrollably when he grabbed her hand. I noticed a constellation of fresh bruising on her wrists as I positioned them for the photograph. When I looked into her eyes to ensure she was facing the camera properly, I saw a desperation there, a silent plea for help. She was desperately trying to communicate something, but with Whitfield watching her every movement, she couldn't speak. She was utterly silenced. James turned the page, his voice cracking with emotion. As I prepared the exposure, I noticed her fingers moving slightly, almost imperceptibly, repositioning themselves into what appeared to be a deliberate pattern. A subtle signal, perhaps. I said nothing, but I made sure to capture it clearly, ensuring the moment was preserved for posterity. I took 3 separate exposures, each one identical to the last. Whitfield, obsessed with control, wanted to ensure he got a perfect image, a testament to his distorted vision of reality. After they left, I felt physically ill, consumed by a profound sense of guilt and helplessness. I knew, deep down, what I had photographed wasn't a wedding. It was undeniable evidence of something criminal, something deeply depraved. But what could I possibly do? Report it to the police? They would have laughed at me, dismissing my concerns, ridiculing me for suggesting that a white man of Whitfield's standing had done anything remotely wrong. Marcus, meanwhile, expanded the investigation, delving deeper into Whitfield's personal history, meticulously examining his past more comprehensively. What they painstakingly uncovered was a chilling pattern of exploitation and abuse that spanned years. A carefully concealed tapestry of depravity woven into the fabric of Atlanta society. Through long-forgotten court records, obscure property documents, and yellowing newspaper archives, a disturbing picture began to emerge. Between 1899 and 1905, at least 6 different families had filed complaints about daughters who had gone to work for Whitfield and subsequently disappeared from contact with their families, their voices swallowed by the silence of the Jim Crow South. Each case followed a strikingly similar trajectory. A black family facing dire economic hardship, a young woman, usually between the ages of 16 and 20, hired as domestic help, initial letters home that suddenly ceased, family members turned away at the door when they tried to visit, police reports filed and immediately dismissed, stamped with the seal of indifference. In 2 agonizing cases, the young women eventually reappeared months later, their spirits visibly broken, refusing to speak about their harrowing experiences, forever scarred by the horrors they had endured. Rebecca unearthed harrowing testimony from a woman named Sarah, who had worked for Whitfield in 1901. She had bravely given a sworn statement to a black community organization, documenting the widespread abuses perpetrated by white employers, a crucial record that existed outside official channels because official channels systematically refused to hear such complaints, reinforcing the structures of oppression. Mr. Whitfield kept 3 of us locked in the house, Sarah stated, her voice trembling with fear, even years after her escape. We were never allowed to leave, not even for a moment. He told us that if we tried to escape, he would have our families arrested for theft or have our fathers lynched, their bodies left hanging as a grim warning to others. He did whatever he wanted to us, treating us like animals. We were his property in every way but name, our humanity stripped away. The testimony continued, revealing the full extent of Whitfield's cruelty. There was another girl there when I arrived, couldn't have been more than 16 years old. She was kept locked in a room on the 3rd floor, and we weren't allowed to speak to her, under threat of severe punishment. I would hear her crying at night, her sobs echoing through the silent house. After a few weeks, she vanished, disappeared without a trace. Mr. Whitfield said she had stolen from him and run away, that she was nothing but a common thief. But I knew better. I knew she wouldn't have left willingly. She was too terrified of what he would do to her family, the repercussions they would face. I managed to escape because my brother threatened to go to the newspapers to expose Whitfield's crimes. Whitfield, desperate to avoid unwanted attention, reluctantly let me go rather than risk further scrutiny. But I know that others weren't so fortunate, that they were trapped, with no hope of ever escaping his clutches. Marcus found incontrovertible records showing that Whitfield had deep connections to local law enforcement and influential city officials. He made regular, substantial donations to political campaigns and hosted lavish social gatherings for Atlanta's elite, solidifying his position within the power structure. He had complete immunity, Marcus said bitterly, his voice dripping with anger. The system actively protected him, shielding him from accountability. The police worked for him, turning a blind eye to his transgressions. The courts deferred to him, upholding his authority without question. And black families had absolutely no recourse, no avenues for justice. Their daughters could be taken, abused, even killed, and there was absolutely nothing they could do about it. Their cries for help lost in the deafening silence of a deeply unjust society. Despite the overwhelming darkness of what they were uncovering, Rebecca remained resolutely focused on Louisa herself, on her individual story of resilience and resistance. The photograph showed far more than mere victimization. It showed defiance, a refusal to be silenced. The hand signal, captured forever in that image, was an act of rebellion, a courageous attempt to leave a record of her captivity. She knew, Rebecca said softly, her eyes locked on the photograph. She knew that this photograph might be the only evidence that would ever exist. So she left a message, a coded cry for help, trusting that someone, someday, would understand. Through Martha Johnson's letters to various organizations and churches, they painstakingly traced the family's desperate attempts to find their beloved daughter, their unwavering determination fueling their search. In October 1903, Henry Johnson, despite his debilitating injuries, bravely tried to force his way into Whitfield's house, desperate to see his daughter, to ensure her safety. He was immediately arrested for trespassing and disturbing the peace, spending 2 weeks languishing in jail, his health further deteriorating. The incident made the local newspapers, but the coverage was entirely sympathetic to Whitfield, painting him as the victim of a deranged former employee's relative. Prominent businessman harassed by deranged former employee's relative, the headline screamed, reinforcing the racial biases of the time. Undeterred, Martha wrote to the NAACP's newly formed Atlanta chapter, her plea a testament to her unwavering love for her daughter. My daughter is being held against her will by Charles Whitfield. She came to his home as an employee and is now his prisoner, her freedom stolen from her. I have not seen her in 4 months, her absence a constant ache in my heart. She would never abandon her family voluntarily. She loves us too much. Please, someone must help us. We have exhausted every legal avenue and no one will listen because we are Negro and he is white and wealthy. Our voices deemed worthless by a society that values power over justice. The NAACP responded, acknowledging their plight, but their investigation hit the same impenetrable walls, their efforts thwarted at every turn. Their lawyer, a courageous black man named Robert Foster, attempted to obtain a writ of habeas corpus, a legal instrument designed to protect individual liberty. But the judge, biased by prejudice and societal pressures, refused to issue it, stating that there was no evidence of illegal detention and suggesting that the Johnson family was making wild accusations against a respected member of society in a brazen attempt to extort money. Foster, undeterred, meticulously documented the case, but could go no further without risking his own safety, his career, and the safety of his family. Then, Marcus found something truly unexpected, a beacon of hope in the midst of the surrounding darkness. A letter, dated December 1903, from a white woman named Eleanor Hartwell, who had been Whitfield's neighbor. Writing to her sister in Boston, she confessed, "There is something deeply troubling happening next door. Charles Whitfield has a young Negro woman in his house whom he claims is a servant, but the entire situation appears far more sinister than he would have anyone believe. I have only seen her once, fleetingly, looking out from an upper window, her face bruised and swollen. I attempted to speak with her when Charles was away from the house, but the other servants refused to let me in, their eyes wide with fear, their bodies trembling. I am seriously considering reporting this to someone, to expose what is happening, but I fear no one will believe me or, worse, that they simply won't care." The trail of Louisa's story went cold after December 1903, and Rebecca, despite her unwavering hope, began to fear the worst, her heart heavy with dread. But then, in a stunning turn of events, Marcus found something extraordinary in an unexpected place: the meticulously kept records of the Freedmen's Hospital in Washington, D.C. In March 1904, A woman named Louisa had been admitted with severe injuries, having been brought to the hospital by members of a black mutual aid society who had found her near the train station, disoriented and barely conscious. The hospital records were sparse, constrained by the limitations of the time, but the details they provided were deeply revealing. Female patient, approximately 20 years of age, gave name as Louisa, but refused to provide a surname, understandably fearful of being found. Multiple injuries in various stages of healing, including broken ribs, deep lacerations, and unmistakable signs of prolonged physical abuse, her body a roadmap of suffering. Patient extremely traumatized and barely speaks, her voice reduced to a whisper, exhibits profound fear of men, especially white men, her eyes haunted by unspeakable horrors. Patient has indicated that she escaped from somewhere in Georgia, but will not provide further details, stating, "He will kill my family if I tell. He will exact his revenge on those I love." Rebecca's heart raced as she read further, the pieces of the puzzle finally falling into place, the truth emerging from the shadows. The hospital had contacted a local organization that provided assistance to escaped women, both those fleeing the lingering remnants of slavery and those escaping abusive situations, offering them refuge and support. A dedicated social worker named Catherine Wells had taken responsibility for Louisa's case, providing her with compassionate care. Her detailed notes offered even greater context, shedding light on the depths of Louisa's trauma. "This young woman has been through unimaginable trauma," Catherine wrote, her words filled with empathy. "She flinches at sudden movements, her body constantly on guard, and suffers from horrific nightmares that wake the entire ward. Her screams a testament to the unspeakable horrors she has witnessed. Over several weeks, she has gradually shared pieces of her story, her voice trembling as she recounted the forced captivity, the repeated assaults, the complete isolation from her family, and the constant threats against her loved ones if she even considered attempting to escape." Catherine's notes from April 1904 recorded Louisa's own words, her voice echoing across time. "I was trapped in that house for 8 months. My life stolen from me. He took everything from me. My freedom, my dignity, my connection to my family. He systematically dismantled my world, leaving me with nothing but fear and despair. The photograph he forced me to take, wearing that white dress, was the worst day of my life, a symbolic representation of my stolen innocence. He wanted to pretend that I was his wife, that I had willingly chosen to be there, to legitimize his actions, to create a facade of normalcy that concealed the truth of my captivity. But I refused to let him have that victory. I made sure to leave a message in that picture, a secret cry for help. I moved my fingers just so, arranging them into a distress signal I had read about in a book, a desperate attempt to reach out to the outside world. I didn't know if anyone would ever see it, if anyone would ever understand what I was trying to convey, but I needed to try, I needed to do something, anything. I needed there to be some evidence that I hadn't gone willingly, that I was a victim, not a willing participant." The hospital records revealed that Catherine had helped Louisa contact her family through carefully coded messages, designed to avoid alerting Whitfield and endangering their lives. In May 1904, Louisa's mother, Martha, finally received a letter, her heart soaring with a mixture of joy and relief. "Mama, I am alive," Louisa wrote, her words carefully chosen, her emotions restrained by the need for secrecy. "I cannot tell you where I am, only that I am safe now and healing, slowly piecing my life back together. The man who held me captive believes that I am dead, and it is imperative that he continue to believe that. It is the only way to keep you, Father, and my siblings safe from his wrath. I will write again when I can, when the time is right. I love you all deeply, more than words can express. Your loving daughter, Louisa." Marcus found the final, chilling piece of the puzzle hidden within the Atlanta newspaper archives from March 1904. A small, almost insignificant article reported, "Fire at Whitfield residence claims life." Authorities report that a tragic fire occurred at the home of prominent businessman Charles Whitfield last evening. One servant perished in the blaze, her life tragically cut short. Mr. Whitfield stated that the young Negro woman, whose name was not recorded, had been careless with a cooking fire, causing the devastating blaze. The body was too badly burned for positive identification, making it impossible to confirm her identity. The incident is considered a tragic accident, an unfortunate event with no further implications. But a black-owned newspaper, the Atlanta Independent, told a radically different story, carefully and subtly worded to avoid retaliation. Sources within the Negro community report that the servant who allegedly died in the recent fire at the Whitfield home had, in fact, escaped weeks earlier, disappearing into the night. Several witnesses report seeing a young woman, matching her description, fleeing the property in February, her eyes filled with terror. The fire appears to have been deliberately set, not an accident at all, designed to obscure the fact of her escape and to intimidate other potential witnesses, to silence those who might dare to speak out. Despite these suspicions, police have declined to investigate further, their actions a clear indication of the racial biases that permeate our society. Louisa had escaped, her courage and determination defying all odds, and Whitfield had ruthlessly covered it up by claiming she had perished in a fire, a convenient explanation that allowed him to maintain his carefully constructed facade of respectability. He couldn't risk admitting that she had gotten away, that she had outsmarted him, without revealing the full truth of her captivity, exposing his depravity to the world. He had to maintain his illusion of innocence, his image as a pillar of the community, so he fabricated a fictional death and simply moved on, his crimes remaining unpunished. For the Johnson family, this meant they could never publicly acknowledge that their daughter was alive, that she had survived the horrors she had endured, without placing her in grave danger, risking Whitfield's vengeful wrath. They were forced to maintain the lie, to pretend that their daughter was dead, their grief compounded by the necessity of silence. Rebecca and Marcus found a series of poignant letters exchanged between Martha Johnson and Catherine Wells, spanning several years, their words a testament to their enduring bond. Catherine had helped Louisa build a new life for herself in Washington, D.C., providing her with the resources and support she needed to heal and rebuild her shattered life, providing her with a safe haven. She found work as a skilled seamstress and later, driven by a desire to help others, trained as a nurse, dedicating her life to caring for the sick and vulnerable. She married a kind and loving man named Edward, a postal worker, in 1908, finding happiness and companionship after years of unspeakable trauma. They had 4 beautiful children, but Louisa never returned to Atlanta, the memories too painful, the risks too great. Her parents, forced to maintain the charade, had to pretend their daughter was dead, their hearts aching with grief, their love constrained by the necessity of silence. Marcus discovered that Louisa kept the story alive in her own way, refusing to let the memory of her suffering fade. In 1925, she gave powerful testimony to a commission investigating racial violence and exploitation in the South, her voice a beacon of truth. She didn't use her real name, protecting herself and her family from potential repercussions, but she told her story with unflinching honesty, exposing the brutal realities of life under Jim Crow. I was 19 years old when a white man took me from my family and held me captive for 8 months, she testified, her words resonating with unwavering strength. He could do this because the law didn't protect people who looked like me, because the system was designed to oppress us. He knew that no one would believe me if I spoke out, that my voice would be dismissed. He knew that my family had no power to save me, that they were helpless against his wealth and influence. But I survived, I persevered, and I want my story on record so that someday, when the world is finally ready to hear it, people will know what happened to women like me, so that our suffering will not be forgotten. Rebecca and Marcus spent 6 months meticulously compiling their research into a comprehensive historical documentation, piecing together the fragmented records to create a cohesive narrative. They traced Louisa's descendants through Washington, D.C. records and eventually found her great-great-granddaughter, a remarkable woman named Dr. Michelle Foster, who taught African American history at Howard University, carrying on her ancestors' legacy of fighting for justice and equality. When Rebecca called her, Michelle's response was immediate and deeply emotional. We had been waiting for someone to find this story. We had been patiently waiting for someone to finally see the truth. They met at Michelle's home, a place filled with family photos and historical artifacts, where she had meticulously preserved everything Louisa had left behind, ensuring that her story would never be forgotten. My great-great-grandmother lived until 1978, Michelle explained, her voice filled with love and respect. She was 94 years old, and she never forgot what happened to her in Atlanta. The trauma forever etched into her memory. She told us the story when we were old enough to understand the weight of her words, the gravity of her experiences. She made us promise to preserve it, to protect it from being erased, to make sure it wasn't forgotten, to keep her memory alive. She recounted Louisa's final words on the matter. Someday someone will find that photograph, and when they do, I want them to know the whole truth. I want them to understand the horrors I endured and the strength I found to overcome them. Michelle showed them Louisa's personal papers, including a journal she had kept in her later years, filled with reflections on her life, her struggles, and her triumphs. One entry, in particular, stood out, a testament to her enduring spirit. I have lived a good life, a full life, in spite of what was done to me. I have found joy amidst the pain. I raised for beautiful children, pouring my love and strength into them, shaping them into compassionate and caring individuals. I helped bring dozens of babies into the world as a nurse, providing comfort and care to those in need. I loved and was loved, experiencing the beauty of human connection. But I never forgot those 8 months, the darkness that threatened to consume me, and I never forgot my parents' anguish, their desperate attempts to save me. She continued, her words filled with hope. That photograph exists somewhere, that haunting image with my silent scream frozen within it, forever capturing a moment of profound suffering. I pray that one day, someone will see it and understand, that they will recognize the truth that lies hidden beneath the surface. I pray that my story will help people recognize how many women suffered in silence, trapped by laws that denied our humanity in a society that refused to see our pain. The National Museum of African American History and Culture organized a powerful and moving exhibition titled Silent Testimony, Louisa's Story and the Hidden History of Jim Crow Captivity, a testament to her enduring legacy. The centerpiece of the exhibition was the haunting 1903 photograph, displayed alongside the photographer's journal, hospital records, family letters, and Louisa's own handwritten testimony, creating a powerful and immersive experience for visitors. The exhibition text was unflinching, refusing to shy away from the painful realities of the past. This photograph documents not a marriage, but a crime, a violation of human rights. It shows a young black woman being held captive by a white man who faced no consequences for his actions because the legal and social systems of Jim Crow America granted him absolute impunity, shielding him from accountability. At the opening of the exhibition, Michelle stood proudly before the photograph, tears streaming down her face, her emotions a mixture of sorrow and triumph. Beside the haunting 1903 image was a radiant photo of Louisa from 1960, age 76, surrounded by her loving children and grandchildren, her face serene and strong, a testament to her resilience and her unwavering spirit. My great-great-grandmother survived, Michelle said to the assembled crowd, her voice filled with emotion. She not only survived, she transcended, rising above the trauma she had endured. She turned her pain into purpose, helping other women, raising a family, building a life of meaning and purpose. This photograph no longer represents just her captivity, her suffering. It represents her resistance, her courage, and her unwavering refusal to be erased from history. Rebecca then addressed the audience, her voice filled with passion. For 120 years, Louisa's distress signal went unnoticed, her cry for help lost in the noise of a society that refused to listen. But she left it there anyway, trusting that someday, someone would look closely enough to see the truth, to understand the message she had so bravely conveyed. Her story is not just about one woman's suffering, but a portrait of systematic abuse enabled by racist laws and social structures, a condemnation of a society that valued power over justice. It's about the countless black women who were similarly victimized, their voices silenced, their stories erased, with no recourse, no hope for justice. And it's about the extraordinary resilience of those who survived, who rebuilt their lives, who built lives of dignity despite everything designed to destroy them. As thousands of visitors moved through the exhibition over the following months, they saw Louisa's hand signal, read her story, and understood the truth that had been hidden for more than a century. Their hearts touched by her courage and her enduring legacy. The photograph had finally fulfilled its purpose. Its silent scream finally heard. Its message finally understood. It wasn't evidence presented to exonerate Louisa in her own era, a desperate plea echoing through the halls of justice that might have altered her fate. Instead, it served as a powerful, enduring monument, a testament etched in ink and memory, defiantly refusing to let the suffocating silence of the past swallow her narrative whole. Her unheard agony, the silent scream trapped within the confines of societal expectations and blatant injustice, had at long last broken free, its resonance finally piercing the veil of indifference. And in that liberation, in the simple yet profound act of being heard, it became a beacon. It amplified the faint whispers of countless others, individuals whose stories, equally poignant and vital, had been deliberately buried beneath the heavy layers of history's convenient, self-serving amnesia. Their muted cries, once lost to the ages, now found an echo in Louisa's own, creating a chorus of voices demanding recognition and remembrance.